Our next question, Jim, was sent in via Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Dewey Rodriguez. Hey, Jim.
Dooley Rodriguez?
Dewey.
I thought you meant Dooley. Dooley never had a dollar. Dooley skipping up the holler. Dooley.
Norm Dooley?
No, that actually was an old recording by the bluegrass group that played the Darling Brothers on the Andy Griffith Show of the folk song Dooley. Dooley skipping up the holler. Dooley never had a dollar. Dooley. All right. Anyway.
Well, here's Dewey's question. Hey, Jim, wanted to get your thought on Hey, Jim,
I just have one.
Hey, Jim, wanted to get your thoughts on Triple H. Not the COO Triple H, but the performer Triple H. How do you rank him as a heel compared to the all-time great heels that have wrestled in the ring? For me, he is one of the best on the mic and in the ring.
Well, this will probably hurt his feelings. Dewey, I'm not talking about Triple H. No, I said one time, and I stand by this, because everybody was talking about that Triple H was the top star in the business. Well, we kind of know why that happened, that he was positioned in that spot. And that doesn't mean that he wasn't a main event guy. And especially find somebody now with that body and that look and that ability to work. And the fucking, I'll say the good things like Stewie Griffin compliment sandwich, dedication to training and ability to come back after the injuries and all that stuff. And for, the wonderful backstage maneuverings. I mean, he's set himself up quite well. And so now if that guy came along, he might be the biggest star in the business. But Triple H in the middle of Steve Austin and The Rock and The Undertaker and Mick Foley and John Cena, he was the guy that worked with the guy that drew the money, was Triple H. I don't think he's one of the best promos, because then that takes into account Ric Flair and Terry Funk and, my God, every other great promo of the wrestling business. And no. But now, as you've looked at what he's done over the past 25 years, he's done quite well for himself, but I don't place him as an all-time great in any performing capacity as a wrestler, whether in ring with matches or on promos or whatever the case. But he's obviously outperformed pretty much every other wrestler in history with his overall career path.
Did Chris Candido ever talk to you about when he first went to the WWF? And I think it would have been WrestleMania. Him and Tammy were brought in, and Triple H was brought in too, because they had just signed him. And how Triple H was telling them, at the time he was John Paul Levesque, how I'll do anything. I'm going to, be the top guy here. I'm going to do whatever it takes to run this place. Did you hear that story back then?
Well, yeah. I mean, he always also, look at how much money he's got right now. Why the fuck does anybody give a shit at that point? Because he's driven to run things. That's if you didn't have people that weren't driven to run things, you wouldn't have Republicans, which I guess might be, but no, it was a 25-year plan. Son of a gun, worked out fine. Or 20. Well, it's been almost 25 years, but yeah, and that's why he ate that fucking mat for Warrior, also the Ultimate Warrior, and that 1 minute, yes, give me your finish, I'll pop right back up and then beat you flat, because Warrior was a piece of shit. And see that yes, he could get over strong, but he didn't have to get over that strong. It's just he could call it, and he didn't give a fuck about anybody else but himself, because he was a selfish prick.
But like that example, because you were there at the time and you were working, as a top executive there at the time. When that happens, what do you think? Because obviously Triple H, there were already issues with him and the clique and his attitude. At least, by some people in management that thought he had a bit of an issue. And then you have the Warrior who's coming in there and he's just, it is ridiculous. I'm going to kick out of your finish and then just destroy you. What do you think backstage when that's happening?
Well, I thought Warrior was a piece of shit and was always on the side of anybody that was counter to Warrior's best interest. I didn't think he should have been there in the first place because of all the reasons why he shouldn't have been there in the first place. And I thought that Triple H from the start was a good young talent that was going to get better. He had a good body. You could already tell he could work. He was paying attention, blah, blah, blah. If he, whether he wanted to run the whole place, I didn't give a fuck. I knew if he wanted to be there for the rest of his life, God bless him. I knew I wasn't going to be there long fucking term because I would have gone insane. The only problem I ever had with him was with the curtain call. And then I even went to him because they made him. Well, all of us got together and said, how do we handle everything? Of course, Vince proceeded to not do anything to fucking Nash and Hall because they were leaving. And he didn't even fuck them on their WrestleMania payoff like he could have because they were already gone. And I wish he would have as some type of penalty for what they did. And he didn't do anything to Michaels because he was the champion. And that was Vince's fault too. Put your belt on that fucking egomaniac. You can't tell me just in goddamn gray hair that Shawn Michaels drew enough money to compensate for the money that any of three other top guys that he could have got behind and pushed at that point. I digress. So the only one they punished was Triple H. And he didn't win the King of the Ring as he was scheduled to. His push was stalled, and he was told to go around and apologize to everybody, which he should have done, and I was all with that, but I thought that Michael should have had done the same thing, or elsewise it was bullshit. So I even sat down with Triple H when he came to me to do the apology. I said, hey, you got in with your friends who could tolerate it, who could tolerate the heat because he couldn't do anything to the two that were leaving, and he's not going to do anything to the guy with the belt. So you're the one that gets punished, which should be a lesson in who you hang around with. As a matter of fact, is what I told him, because they didn't give a fuck that you were going to get fucking buried. I said, and you did something wrong, but you're apologizing to everybody, and just lay low and keep working hard because your work is good and you look good, et cetera, and people will forget about it. And I thought that was good advice until not only did they not forget about it, but fucking moron Russo actually a couple years later, 2 years or a year and a half or whatever it is putting the fucking video on Raw, bringing it back up for the people that weren't there in person. Fucking moron. And then Helmsley goes around and says, well, I apologize, but I didn't mean it. Well, if he didn't mean his apology for exposing the business in Madison Square Garden, if he didn't mean the apology he told all the boys, then that's when I pretty much didn't give a fuck about him as a person. And that's when, I will, as I've just done, recognize that he's talented and he's done a lot of major shit, but he was one of the guys that exposed the business in the Garden. He gave guys bullshit apologies. And so it's not like we would be personal friends and on our Christmas card list.
All right, so let's look at it now a different way. So that's Triple H, the wrestler, Triple H, the young wrestler that you were around. All these years later, seeing NXT, and if everything goes according to what a lot of people think the plans are, eventually Triple H runs WWE with Stephanie after Vince is no longer in the picture. What you see from NXT, does it give you hope for Triple H's vision of wrestling?
Yes, because Triple H was a fan of old school wrestling. He just fell in with the cool kids in class at that time that were helping elevate him and did some stupid shit. And, and he's had to go along with Vince's vision of, well, it's entertainment and et cetera, but he was a fan of wrestling. And he was a fan of Ric Flair, and he was a fan of NWA title matches, and he's a fan of athletes. And he's not going to be obviously a sizist because there's small guys now on NXT and every other division, but the guys all have to look like athletes or have some type of gimmick that excuses that they not look like athletes, and they still have to be athletes even though they don't look like it. And he's having these guys, and they're highly trained. And by that, I'm not saying that every single one of them is the greatest psychological wrestler in the world and puts together the best match, but they certainly execute all the moves not only safely, but crisply and well. So they're highly trained in that aspect. So yes, and I don't see any of the stupid, goofy shit. I don't think Triple H has the fucking fondness for fart jokes and shit and white cotton panties and all Vince's other strange fucking fixations. I think he wants to present a somewhat serious product with moments of levity, like we may have seen with fucking Keith Lee and old bro chasing Generico around, but it's not stupid. And I don't think that I think Triple H would throw his body in front of the company ever bringing in a bunch of these outlaw goofs and having a match with the Invisible Man. So, yeah, I think they'll be better off.